Hi everyone, as you know, the last unit of the year is called food. So whenever we're talking about food, we may talk about the ingredients such as cheese, ham, bread, milk, etc. However, in order for us to prepare actual food, we need more than ingredients. That's why today we're going to study some nouns that will help us give cooking instructions. That means that we're going to study kitchenware and we're going to also study some cooking verbs that are going to help us. So let's start with the kitchenware. What is kitchenware? Kitchenware is all the utensils that we use whenever we are preparing food, right? So the first kitchenware we have is saucepan. Saucepan, which is like a pot but smaller and is used whenever we're trying to prepare something liquid, for example, some tomato sauce. Okay. Also, we have the actual pot. The pot, it's like a general name, but this kind of pot, it's called either stew pot or stock pot. Why? Because it's the utensil that we use whenever we are actually preparing either stew or some stock. The stock is like a soup, but like it takes more time to be ready. So that is why it's called stock pot or stew pot. The next one is the frying pan. As its name says, it is used for us to actually prepare food whenever we are using oil. So that means that we are frying something. That is where the name comes from. And of course, the size may vary. We also have the wok. The wok is more commonly used whenever we are preparing Asian food, right? Like Japanese or Chinese food, or even Korean. They prefer to use the wok for cooking almost everything. For example, rice or any other type of noodles. Okay, but we also use it here, and that is the actual name, wok. Besides that, we have the grater. The grater, we normally use it whenever we're trying to get fine portions of cheese, for example, but we also can use it for other vegetables. So the name of this utensil is grater. The next one is the peeler. The peeler is an utensil that we can use whenever we are trying to remove the skin from either fruits or vegetables. The size and form may vary, but the name is always the same, peeler. We also have the rolling pin. The rolling pin can be either made of wood or plastic or any other material, and it's whenever we're trying to make something flat. We use it so we can help ourselves to prepare, for example, a pizza. We also have the bowl. The bowl can be either made of glass, plastic, or even metal. And its function is for containing elements that can be either liquid or solid. And we use it in a lot of preparations. Then we have the whisk. The whisk, which is really helpful whenever we are trying to either beat, whisk, or mix elements. And it helps us aerate the elements that we are actually combining. For example, flour, or whenever we are beating the eggs, it will help us to provide some air to whatever we are mixing. Then we also have some other elements that we can use within our kitchen, as for example, the spatula that can be like this one, a metal one, or it can be made of wood, or even can be plastic or the rubber spatula, which is like even softer, right? So it can help us to either flip some elements or to mix them. We have also the spoon. Of course, we have the regular spoon that we use whenever we are eating or whenever we are eating, for example, soup. But we have the larger spoon that can help us stir the soup, for example, whenever we are cooking it. Also, we have the ladle, which is like a spoon but even bigger and deeper, so we can gather some liquid elements, and the thumbs. Okay, so these are some elements that we can use within our kitchen. And as well, we have the wooden spoon. As I was mentioning, the spoon can be made of any material. So this one in particular is called wooden spoon because, as its name says, it's made of wood. Besides that, we have the knife. As you know, we can have different sizes of knives, so we can use them either for cutting our meat whenever we are eating it, or we can cut fish, we can cut bread, and all of them may have different functions, different sizes, different forms, but the name is always the same, knife. And for us to protect our table and for us to keep our food clean, we use also a cutting board. The cutting board that can be made as, again, from stone, wood, plastic, or any other material, but the name is always the same. We have also the pizza slicer. A pizza slicer, we have different forms. We can have a creative form like this one, which remains a bicycle, or we can have the regular one, which is just a disc with a handle. And we use it specifically for cutting pizza in an easier way, of course. Then we have the cutlery. The cutlery is a name that contains all the utensils that we use for us to eat. So it may include the spoon, the knife, fork, and even the chopsticks. Remember that whenever we are eating Asian food, for example sushi, we may use the chopsticks instead of a fork, right? So cutlery is the name that includes all these utensils. Then we have colander. Colander, which is an element that may have different forms, let's say, or different shapes, but it's basically something similar to a bowl, but with holes that would allow us to separate liquid from solids. So we can use it whenever we are washing our vegetables, whenever we're washing our fruit, or we're just trying to remove the water from the pasta. Something similar to a colander is a sifter, but a sifter is an element or an utensil with a mesh that has very, very fine holes, and it would help us for us to remove any particles that we don't want, or to remove any lumps. So whenever we are, for example, working with flour, we need a sifter because a colander is not going to be any help. So that's why we prefer the sifter, which is similar but with very, very fine holes. Something that is similar to a sifter and a colander is also a strainer. The strainer will help us also to remove particles or to remove water from our elements. But in this case, the holes of a strainer are bigger than a sifter, but not as big as the ones from a colander. So this is like in between. Then we have some electric appliances that we can use within our kitchen. So the first one would be the blender. Like, I think that almost everyone may have one in our houses. So we can mix some elements, but also we are processing them in a way that we can soften their texture. Besides the blender, we have the mixer. So the mixer will just combine two different elements. For example, we can combine flour with butter and milk, whenever we are preparing a delicious cake. Besides the mixer, we have the kettle. The kettle is going to help us to heat or even boil water. So this one, it's going to have almost the same function as a pot, as a saucepan. However, we use it just for liquids and not exactly for cooking or preparing food, but rather just to heat or boil water. Besides that, we have the ovens. Remember that we may have different types of ovens. So we have one that is very common and it's very useful whenever we are trying to heat our food, a food that is already prepared, of course. The microwave. The microwave oven, which is this one, right? It's different to a regular oven, like a convention oven, because we are not using fire to produce heat, but we are actually using microwaves, right? And then we have the regular oven that can be working either with gas or can work also with electricity, and that can help us bake or roast, right? Then we move to the cooking verbs. The cooking verbs are the actions that will help us explain the different processes that we go through whenever we are preparing food. So, we may separate the cooking verbs into different categories. So the first one is whenever we are using heat, either fire or any other heat source. The first one we have is to bake. As we discussed before, we may use an oven whenever we're trying to prepare a cake or a pie. So to bake is actually to cook something by means of heating the preparation, but we're not using anything additional such as oil or water. Then we also have to boil. So whenever we are boiling something, we are heating a liquid that can be either water, milk, or any other juice, right? And we are heating it until it produces bubbles. So it reaches certain temperature that start producing bubbles. So we can either boil the liquid itself, or we can include any fruit or vegetable or meat in a boiling liquid, and we also call it boil. Then also another preparation that can be made within an oven is to broil. But usually broil includes a higher temperature than baking. So we have broil, and then we have to melt. To melt is to actually turn something solid into a liquid by means of heat. So for example, we can melt butter, right? Whenever we're trying to make some preparations, it is required for us to melt first the butter, and then we add it to the mixture. So this is to melt, right? We have to grill. Who doesn't love grilled meat, right? Grilled meat, it's whenever we are actually using a grill, right? This element is also called grill. So grill can be either the noun or can be a verb. So whenever we are preparing food, either vegetables or meat or anything else within a grill, it's to grill. Then we have to roast, right? We can roast chickens or we can roast potatoes, right? It's also using some heat, but even though it's similar to bake or to broil, it's a different preparation, right? So we have to roast within a roaster. Some ovens may include a section specifically for us to roast, and some others may not. So if you need to roast something, you need to figure out whether your oven has that function or not. The next one is to simmer. To simmer is to maintain a liquid in a temperature that it's almost boiling but not yet. So it's like in the temperature in which you start to see the bubbles, but it's not boiling yet. So that is to simmer. And then to cook. To cook is actually just prepare food by means of using some heat source. So whenever you are cooking, you need to actually use either a stove, or whenever you're using some fire, then is when you're actually cooking. If you're just combining things without using heat, then you're just preparing some food, but you're not cooking it. Then we have to stir fry. To stir fry, it's very similar, very common, when you are actually preparing Asian food. And is to actually do this, which is similar to saute, right? So whenever you are raising the wok, and then you are moving the food inside. To fry. What is to fry? To fry is to cook the food by using oil. So you're mixing the food with your oil, and then is how you obtain something fried. We have to steam. To steam is whenever you are using some water that is boiling, so the steam that comes over this liquid or water, in most of the cases, it's actually cooking the food. So by cooking the food by means of steam, that is actually to steam. Then, whenever you're using a microwave oven, the action of putting the food inside so it can get heat, it's actually to microwave. So to microwave is actually a verb that you can use as well. The next one is to heat. So whenever you're heating something, is just adding some heat to your food, right? So whenever you're turning your food from cold or room temperature to hot or warm, that is to heat. So you can heat, for example, the oil before you're frying something. Then the next verb has to do with using sharp objects. Sharp objects can include a grater, a knife, or a peeler. So, to cut. To cut is to separate an element into two or more parts by using a knife. So that is to cut. Also, you can cut by using scissors, but within the kitchen, it's more common for us to use a knife than scissors, right? Depending on the way you're cutting the things or the elements, the food, you can also call it to slice. So to slice is whenever you are cutting your food into thin portions. For example, you can make slices of carrot, slices of bread, slices of ham, etc. Another way of cutting is to chop. Whenever you're chopping and not going shopping, to chop, it's whenever you're cutting the food into very small portions. Okay, so this is to chop. Okay, whenever you're cutting repeatedly into small sections. Another way of cutting is to dice. Dice is whenever you're making like a cube. So when you are cutting your food into small cubes, this is to dice. Then we have to peel. To peel, which is just removing the skin of fruits or vegetables by using either a peeler or a knife. This is to peel, and then we have to grate. Remember, the name of this object is grater. So the action is to grate. For example, we can grate some cheese or some vegetables. Then whenever we are using either a spoon, spatula, or fork, or whisk, we have some other verbs that can become really helpful when explaining a process or a recipe. The first one is to spread, which is this action, right? So we can spread something into a surface, right? That can be a bread, it can be a tortilla, anything, right? And we can use either a spoon, a knife, or a spatula. Then to stir. To stir is whenever we are removing something while we're cooking it, right? So we can use a wooden spoon or any other type of spoon whenever we are stirring our preparation. To beat is to stir but with a higher force, right? And whenever we are beating something, we are trying just to include some air into our preparation. So we can beat, for example, the eggs, right? And we can either use a whisk or a fork for us to beat something. Whenever we are mixing something, we are actually combining two or more elements with the help of either a spatula or a fork or spoon or whatever we have handy, right? That is to mix, to combine two or more elements, and those can be two liquids or solids, or it can be solid and liquid, right? Then something else that we have is to whisk. To whisk is actually aerating our preparation, and usually to whisk is whenever we are mixing a liquid and a solid element. So that is to whisk. And then we go to the different cooking verbs that we perform with our hands. The first one is to break. To break is to separate the elements in two or more parts by force. So whenever we are trying to cook some eggs, we need to break them first, right? That is to break. And then we have to shake. We shake. Whenever we are shaking something, it's performing this action, right? So when we are moving the elements, so they can become combined. To sprinkle, right? To add something by adding them into very small portions, so we can sprinkle sugar or salt to our preparations. Then we have to stuff. To stuff is whenever we are introducing some filling to our preparation. So we can prepare, for example, stuffed turkey or something like that. So that is to stuff, whenever we are filling our food with more food. Then we have to knead. To knead is whenever we are preparing our dough, right? Whenever we are preparing, for example, pizza dough or something like that, we need to knead them, right? To incorporate all the elements with our hand, right? Then we have the cooking verbs in which we need special kitchenware. So let's see those. The first one is to blend. Do you remember the blender? Well, whenever we are introducing our food, not our cell phone, into the blender, we call it to blend. So we can blend our fruits, our vegetables with either some fruit juice, or we can also mix it or blend it with water or milk or any other liquid. Then we have to roll out. Whenever we are trying to flatten our dough or any other preparation or meat, we need to use the rolling pin. So the action of using a rolling pin to flatten the food, it's called to roll out. The next one is to weigh. To weigh is whenever we need to know how much elements we are including. So we are measuring them, and we can either use a scale or a weighing machine. Then we have to sift. Whenever we are using a sifter to separate some small particles or to eliminate the lumps, that action of passing one element through the sifter is called to sift. Then to strain or to drain is whenever we are using either a colander or a strainer to remove the water from the rest of solid elements. For example, after washing our fruit, or after washing our vegetables, or after cooking our pasta, we need to strain or drain them, right? So we can eliminate all the liquids. Then we have other cooking verbs, right, that do not require a special kitchenware. For example, we have to add. To add is just to integrate two or more elements into one single preparation. Then we have to pour. To pour, which is whenever we are integrating a liquid, right? So we can pour some water, we can pour some milk, we can pour Coke, anything that is liquid. And we have to serve. Once we have finished cooking or preparing a delicious food, we just serve it, right? Whenever we are giving the food to the people that we will actually eat it, that is to serve. As well, we have to dip, which is whenever we have dip and we are introducing our food into that. It can be a sauce or it can be some cheese, right? So to dip. And then we have to soak, which is whenever we are letting some elements, for example seeds, into water, right? We're not cooking them, we're just letting them sit into water. The next one is to thicken. To thicken is used whenever we are preparing some sauces, right? And we are actually adding something so it can have a thicker texture, right? So this is to thicken, right? So instead of being so liquid, it can become a little bit more solid. And then to wash is whenever we are removing any dirt or whenever we want to make something clean by adding water, and we can sometimes include some soap. All right? And then besides kitchenware, besides cooking verbs, we need to also include some containers and amounts so we can finish talking about our food. So let's see the containers that we have here. We have a mug, which is similar to a cup, but it's a little bit bigger and it helps us to take hot drinks, right? We have cups, we have glass, right? Remember, the glass can be this one or the one that we use to drink some wine. Then the jug, we have jars, we have the thin or the tin can, depending on the place you are. If you're in the United States, you need to mention tin can, but if you're in Europe, you can just say tin and they will understand. Then we have the regular can, right? Not necessarily made of tin. We have bottles that can come in any size or in any shape. Then we have a package, we have a carton, a liter, we have bags, right? And then a dozen is when we have 12 elements of the same thing. For example, in other countries such as the United States, it's really common for us to buy the eggs by dozen. We have also the tubes, which are cylinders made either of metal or plastic. Here in our country, we usually have the toothpaste coming into tubes,
But in Europe, for example, we have also some food coming into tubes, as for example, mayonnaise. Other containers are a spray can and the spray bottle. We have as well the loaf, which is a measure that we use for bread. The slice, which is a thin portion of something that can be, for example, a slice of bread, a slice of ham, or a slice of pizza. We have a bar that can be either a bar of soap or it can be also a bar of chocolate, right? We can say chocolate bar or a candy bar. We have a piece which is a portion without any specific shape, and we can talk about pieces of meat or pieces of cheese. The tub, which is a container that is usually made of plastic that can help us contain some elements that can be either liquid or solid. For example, yogurt can come into tubs. Pack, which is similar to a package but in a smaller size, right? A bunch, which is actually whenever we gather or we fasten together a number of things, right, which are usually of the same kind, as for example a bunch of grapes, right? It's something that we can hold together. We have a bowl, which is a kind of dish that we use specifically for liquids such as soups or stew. And also we have the kilo, which is a unit of measure that we can use for weighing. We can also have the pounds for weighing, right? Remember that a kilo is 2.2 pounds. We have as well a box, a tray, which is a flat thing that we can use to carry some food. Then we have the rolls, the six pack, which is a group of 6 elements of the same kind. We have the blister pack, which is usually used for medicine, right? For pills, for example. Then we have a package, which is something that we send to others. And a package can have the shape of either a box or can be either just a big envelope. And last but not least, we have the basket, which can be just the unit of measure or the element. So we can measure, for example, strawberries by basket. So we can ask for 1 or 2 baskets of strawberries.
Alright, well, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to complete the guide so you can put your knowledge into practice. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later, guys. Bye!